Yung issue naman tungkol doon sa paid up capital, na ang unang paid up capital when the company entered into a contract with the government, their paid up capital was only 625,000. And they bag, according to the news reports, no, they bag an 8 billion transaction with the government. So is that an issue? Well, to me, Mr. Chairman, as long as na-deliver, na-comply, nagawa ng kumpanya ang dapat nilang i-deliver sa gobyerno, which in this case, yung mga face mask, yung mga PPEs, hindi na ho siguro maging malaking issue kung bakit maliit lang po ang paid up capital nila at that time. Especially so, when the Bayanihan Act 1, this is a law approved by both houses, by the Senate and by the lower house, na napakalinaw po doon na binibigyan ng exemption ng presidente from the government procurement law. And let me go to the issue, Mr. Chairman. Kaya nga sabi ko at the last hearing, kung may ebidensya lang sana, maganda na sana i-file na lang sa ombudsman ang kaso kung may ebidensya man o kung may gustong mag-file ng kaso. Kasi po, that to me also will be a test kung ano bang naging epekto ng Bayanihan Act 1 law. A special law at that fact, pero napakalawak ng epekto nito sa atin. So there are issues right now, there are concerns being raised right now.
Paano ka mag-interpolate?
It was subject to an exemption from the government procurement law. Which brings me to the question, Mr. Chairman. To the Commission on Audit, I'll have a question to the Commission on Audit. There are calls right now to call for a special audit sa usap ito. May I ask may background lang po tayo para malipat. Mr. Chairman, audible pa ba ako?
Yes. Please proceed.
Yes, to the Commission on Audit po. I just want to ask po, there are calls being made right now for a special audit. Assuming that will be done, there is reason to do that. How long do you think, sir, will it take for the Commission on Audit to conduct the special audit?
Mr. Chairman, depende po yun dun sa magiging scope ng special audit. Because if it will include verification of all deliveries, you have to remember you're talking about close to 30 billion that has been delivered or supposedly has been delivered to DOH offices, hospitals, and the like all over the country. So kung kasama po lahat yon, medyo matatagalan talaga yung process kung ganun. No? So it depends on the scope. There was a request made during our budget hearing to look into the pharmacy contracts. Ngayon, kung limited po doon, maybe it won't take us long dahil nga you're looking at only several types of several contracts. The biggest problem would be yung sa deliveries. If sa subject pa yung sa special audit, medyo mahirap yon, not only because of the volume and the geographical locations, but also because there are also mobility restrictions. No? So depende pa po. I think there's a team that's looking into ano ang i-focus nila doon sa audit na yon.
Sir, let's say limited po limited ang scope ng special audit. Mga ilang buwan ho will it take? I'm asking this question which I'll explain later on kung bakit po. How long will it take for a limited scope special audit?
Yeah. It's really hard to estimate pero siguro normally ang hinihingi nila dyan would be about 60 to 90 days.
60 for a limited scope. Pero kung sabihin naman natin na yung kabubuan ng transaction, it will take more than 90 days.
Yes. If you're talking say about the 42 billion or actually if you include 2021, 48 billion na yung na-transfer sa PSDBM. No? If you include that, matagal po talaga yon. Because just as an example, yung Malampaya Fund, years po yan. At saka hanggang ngayon hindi pa tapos kasi maraming aspeto yon. There are some partial reports that have been released. But not all the reports have been released so far.
Well, I'm asking this question, sir, because kagaya nga nung opening statement ng chairman natin ng Good Government, si Chairman Mike Aglipay, when he spoke about some hearings conducted na nagkaroon ng epekto sa mga ilang personalidad in relation to the elections at the time na hinaharap natin. So ako lang naman is I'm raising this concern to be fair with everybody, especially now by next month filing na ng certificate of candidacies, then by May of next year magkakaroon na ng election. Siguro lang just to be fair lang siguro po sa mga involved dito sa transaction na to, I just hope na hindi siya magiging issue or a hearing is conducted for the reasons because of the election po. So precisely we're asking gaano katagal ang special audit so that the sooner na we'll be coming up with the truth, maganda po. This will be fair to everybody. Napaka-unfair lang din naman to some people that diretso na ang issue that may corruption sa issue na to. But if you look at it, sinasabi naman ng COA, walang overpricing. Paulit-ulit natin dapat sabihin to sa taong bayan, wala namang issue ng overpricing, wala namang issue sa procurement, wala namang nilabag na batas. So sana lang should a special audit be made for that purpose, magawa na sa tamang panahon, mailabas yung report say before the election para hindi naman siya magiging issue for the election. Pero we would like to avoid a situation kung saan for example an issue na tinalakay sa isang hearing, may mga epekto sa mga ilang naging kandidato, but after the election makikita natin yung palang ni-raise during the hearing wala naman palang ebidensya, but the person involved already faced the consequences, naapektuhan na siya for that election at that time kung kailan ginawang hearing. So I just hope especially doon sa issue naman ng ghost delivery, lilinaw po ito once the special audit will be made for that purpose. Pero alam naman natin lahat, this is ang mga transactions na to was during the start of the pandemic. Napakaiba ng sitwasyon na yun. Even some of the government offices were closed. Would you imagine how it would affect the transactions, even on procurement, even on auditing, kung sarado yung mga opisina natin, if our government officials and employees hindi sila nakapunta sa opisina nila.
Congressman po.
Yes po. Yes, and makikita natin ang epekto talaga sa kabubuan ng mga trabaho ng ahensya ng gobyerno natin. So, second point, I feel this is important not only to the national government but including to the local government units concerned. Another question to the Commission on Audit. As an offshoot, for example, of the Bayanihan 1 or as a result of the effects of COVID-19, especially beginning March of 2020, may mga COA circulars ba, Commission on Audit circulars ba na issue po governing yung mga transactions not only limited to the national government but even to the local government units? Was there any peculiar audit rules issued, circulars issued for that matter, sir?
Meron po, but these are internal guidelines. These are meant as instructions to the auditors in doing their work, no? So may guidelines po sila which are based on all the laws that were effective during that period. As you know, yung Bayanihan Act was only for a particular period, Bayanihan 1, no? And then you had Bayanihan 2. So yun po, they were all put together into internal guidelines. And together with that, naglabas po ako ng parang notes to remind them, first of all, na nasa pandemya pa tayo. We're still in a state of emergency. Secondly, to remind them also that sometimes some rules that apply in normal situations don't always apply in abnormal situations. And number three, to use a combination of course, what's found in the law and the guidelines, experience, gaya po ng pagbili po ng masks, for example, sila rin siguro may experience sila kung gaano kamahal nila nabili. So they should use that. Then lastly, of course, common sense. So yun po. meron po kami, we were prepared naman for this. Na, we know it's a state of emergency. We know people were panicking at certain point in time. And so, nagbigay naman po kami ng instructions to auditors on how to go about doing the audit of COVID-related expenditures.
Yes, sir. Just to be official na lang siguro po, I hope you're willing to share with us yung mga so-called reminders ninyo to the committee po, yung mga official documents nito for our perusal also po. And perhaps it will guide also the committee once we'll be coming up with the recommendations after this hearing po. Is that okay with you, sir?
Yeah, I don't think it will be a problem, sir.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Chairman.
So, yun lang po, Mr. Chairman, and it's our second hearing. Like I said, yung issue naman po ng overpricing, alleged overpricing, and hindi daw sumunod sa batas ng procurement law, nagiging mas malinaw po sa atin sa committee na ito na wala hong ganong pangyayari. So I hope that will be clear to our people. Siguro later on, Mr. Chairman, in my next round, depende po as we go along kung ano pa yung mga itatanong natin. But again, thank you to the Commission on Audit.
Thank you, Mayor Joe Awareness. I would like to ask before proceeding to the next interpellator, our last interpellator for the first round. Is Ms. Mago here? Quizzy, Grace Mago. Ms. Mago?
Good afternoon, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman.
Are you here?
Yes po, Mr. Chairman.
Sa hearing ng Senate, yung mga pinapakitang text ni Senator Risa Hontiveros na parang nagte-text ka doon sa tiga DBMPS, hindi nila alam na magdi-deliver kayo. Bakit naging ganon?
Mr. Chairman, to be very honest, I cannot confirm na yung text message na yun because I recently changed my phone kasi po nasira yung phone na gamit ko at that time. So it's hard for me to confirm or deny po yung text message na pinost ni Senator Risa Hontiveros.
Pero nag-advance delivery kayo without the knowledge of the DBMPS? Nagpapadala kayo doon sa warehouse nila?
Mr. Chairman, let me just explain that I am an employee of Pharmaly Pharmaceutical Corporation and I will always take instructions or orders from our management po.
So, hindi, yes or no lang. Nagdi-deliver ba kayo without the knowledge of DBMPS?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. Next sa BIR, Commissioner Dulay. Commissioner Dulay, sir.
Good afternoon, Your Honors and the honorable members of the committee. I'm Attorney Larry Barcelo, Your Honor, from the Legal Service. Commissioner Dulay returned to his office to attend to some important official functions at the moment, Your Honor.
Siya,
But I
kasi
can answer the questions, Your Honor.
regarding ito, kaya mong sagutin?
What's the question po, Your Honor?
Yung mga 8 billion procurement, na inadmit nila they did 8 billion contracts from 2020 to 2021. Binabawasan ba sila ng withholding tax?
Yes, Your Honor. If the procuring entity is the government,
Yes, government.
procurement is procurement of goods or services, there's a withholding tax, Your Honor. For procurement of goods, that's 2%. And for the procurement of services, I think that's 1%, Your Honor, withholding tax.
So 2% in this case kasi goods.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
And there's also withholding of value-added tax. Your Honor. Goods is 1%, no? And services is 2%. I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Goods is 1%. Yung value
Yes,
added
Your
tax, kanong wini-withhold?
Tax, Your Honor, is 5%.
So in the transaction, magkano ang ni-withhold sa Farmally? May record kayo na remit ba nila? Na-remit ba ng DBMPS yung mga withhold sa Farmally? Please answer.
Your Honor, we will check with our records, Your Honor. But
Okay, please give me records in endorsed to the committee secretariat yung withhold taxes ng DBM sa kanila. How much for 2020 and how much for 2021? Give me the record by Thursday to the committee secretariat, attorney.
Your Honor, we would like to manifest, Your Honor, about the records, taxpayers' information records, Your Honor. I would like to manifest that under Section 270 of the tax code that is confidential, Your Honor.
Yes,
And-
this will not be under the authority of Congress. This will not be divulged to the public or those not members of this committee. It will be
Your
taken under confidential manner.
Yes, Your
And-
Honor.
Be part of our report. We will just like to see if they are paying their taxes.
Yes, Your Honor. We'll just to add, Your Honor, that there's actually an exception under Section 20A of the tax code, no, where we can provide taxpayers information, and that is when the committee is sitting in executive session, Your Honor.
Yes, we are seeking it in executive session. We are requiring it under executive session, meaning it only goes to limited members of the committee. And it will not be divulged in the committee report.
If
Will be
it is
confidentially.
we will provide, Your Honor.
Thank you. Thank you, attorney. Next to interpolate is Honorable Ron Salo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, thank you very much.
Yes.
Yes. This is a continuation of my line of questioning last time. For Ian, under RA 11469 or the Bayanihan Law, Mr. Chair, klaro po yung nakasulat po doon under Section 4 na ang requirement lang po talaga na o parameters na binabanggit po ng Bayanihan Law is that the procurement of the following, yung mga binabanggit din po natin ng mga goods and services should be procured in the most expeditious manner as exemptions of RA 9184, wherein it has been elucidated by all our speakers or resource persons based on the questionings paulit-ulit ng mga nagtatanong pa ngayon na klaro po na ito po yung existing na an applicable law when this particular procurement or procurement were undertaken. Ngayon, klaro rin po na paulit-ulit natin tinatanong doon sa concern po natin with respect to the price on the process. Mayroon bang doon sa price ba mataas ba o mababa at lumalabas po average, consistent doon sa more pangailangan din at the same time doon sa mga deliveries ng ibang mga suppliers itong Farmally. Ang tanong doon sa process, did they comply with the process required under the law? And of course, the process as was elucidated a while ago by Deputy Ombudsman Warren, klaro po yun na iba't tatlong klase yun. May RA 9184, tapos may exemptions on emergency purchases under the RA 9184. At the same time, may purchases pursuant to the Bayanihan Law. And binabanggit din po nila that there's a supplementary guidelines issued by the GPPB at yun din po yung ginamit. So klaro po yun, Mr. Chair. But at the same time, klaro rin na hindi naman ibig sabihin po na dahil may RA 91, may Bayanihan Law, ay hindi na po tayo gagamit po ng mga other existing laws. Specifically, with respect to Republic Act RA 3019 o the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, as well as dun sa RA 6713, na ito rin po yung binabanggit po ng ibang mga nagtatanong. So specifically, Mr. Chair, to dispel any doubts, para klaro rin po at alam din po natin at malalaman din po ng lahat na nanonood ngayon ng publiko, I'll confront the resource persons now, specifically asking them dito po sa binabanggit po ng Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, as well as the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials Employees. Sapagkat ang sinasabi po sa Section 1, Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, it is the policy of the Philippine government in line with the principle that the public office is a public trust to repress certain acts of public officers and private persons alike which constitute graft or corrupt practices act which may lead thereto. So tatanungin ko po ngayon specifically sina Yusek Lloyd Lau, si Deputy Ombudsman Warren Leong, tsaka si Director Jonas o Joshua Laurel. May I just inquire kung si Director Joshua Laurel was already part of PSDBM when this particular transaction were undertaken? Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I believe Mr. Joshua Laure is not available for this hearing.
Sino pong, so kayo po ba ang
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Director Jolas Brutas?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Director for Operations of PSDBM.
Were you part of the PSDBM who undertook this particular procurement for the government?
Not yet, Mr. Chair. I assumed my position this year only.
Sino po sa inyo ang part ng process?
I believe the former Director for the Procurement is here. For the Deputy Ombudsman, Attorney Warren Leong is here.
And
Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, I was with PSDBM when they procured Bayanihan 1.
Mr. Chairman.
yes. And also, so dalawa lang po yung tatanungin ko, Mr. Chair, in that regard. So ang tanong ko po dito, sapagkat binabanggit po under Section 3, na paulit-ulit po na binabanggit din ng mga ibang mga nagtatanong sa inyo, pero kaklaruhin ko na lang po in this particular instance, and isa-isahin ko para maging klaro rin po sa publiko at kayo mismo, sa inyo mismo manggagaling, kung mayroon bang nalabag na anything in this particular section, na ito rin po ang ini-implement po ng Ombudsman ngayon. Under Section 3, anong sabi niya dito? Corrupt practices of public officers. In addition to acts or omissions of public officers already penalized by existing law, the following shall constitute corrupt practices of any public officer and are hereby declared to be unlawful. So una, si Deputy Ombudsman Warren, did you persuade, induce, or influence any other public official to perform an act constituting a violation of rules and regulations duly promulgated by competent authority, or an offense in connection with your official duties as director then, or allowed yourself to be persuaded, induced, or influenced to commit any violation or offense in relation to this procurement?
No, Your Honor. I was not induced, neither did I induce anyone.
Thank you. How about you, Yusek Lau? Did you?
Same answer, Mr. Chairman. I did not induce, neither was I induced by any person, Mr. Chairman.
Ang second item, Section B, ang babasahin ko lang naman po yung relevant sa inyong case. Directly or indirectly requesting or receiving any gift, present, share, percentage, or benefit for yourself or for any other person in connection with any contract or transaction between the government, in this particular regard the transaction, and any other part wherein you, as public officer in your official capacity, has to intervene under the law. Nag-request ba kayo o binigyan ba kayo ng any gift or any present, share, percentage, or anything of value in relation to this transaction, Deputy Ombudsman?
Hindi po. Hindi po, Mr. Chairman. Hindi po, Your Honor.
How about you, Yusek Lau?
None, Mr. Chairman.
Third, did you cause any undue injury to the government or gave formally any unwarranted benefits, advantage, or preference in the discharge of your administrative official duties through manifest partiality, evident bad faith, or gross inexcusable negligence? Did you, Deputy Ombudsman?
No, Mr. Chairman. We did not.
How about you, Yusek Lau?
No, Mr. Chairman. I did not, Mr. Chairman.
So you did not cause any undue injury to the government. There was no injury caused to the government with the procurement of this particular goods and services or goods, supplies from Farmally.
None, Mr. Chairman.
No, Mr.
Did you
Chairman.
enter on behalf of the government into any contract or transaction, in this particular case, this particular transaction? Are these considered was manifestly or grossly disadvantageous to the government?
No, Mr. Chairman. Actually, everything we did was to the advantage of the government, Mr. Chairman.
How about you, Deputy Ombudsman?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Everything we did was to the advantage of the government, Your Honor. We needed those items and we needed to act fast, Mr. Chairman.
So you're categorically saying here that you did not cause any disadvantage to the government in the procurement of these goods from Pharmaly.
That is
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Last item under this particular Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, did you directly or indirectly have financing or pecuniary interest in the business of Pharmaly?
I have no interest in the business of Pharmaly, Your Honor. I do not know them.
none, Mr. Chairman.
So, doon sa tanong din nung nakaraan, may tumawag ba sa inyo? May nagsabi ba sa inyo na dapat nyo ibigay dito sa Pharmaly o engage sila na maging supplier ng gobyerno, Deputy Ombudsman?
Wala po sa akin, Mr. Chairman. Wala po.
How about you, Yusek Lau?
None, Mr. Chairman.
Pupunta naman po tayo dito sa Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials and Employees. Ang binabanggitin po dito that every public official and employee shall observe the following as standards of personal conduct in the discharge and execution of official duties. At isa pong pinabanggit po dito is commitment to public interest. Public officials and employees shall always uphold the public interest over and above personal interest. All government resources and powers of your respective offices must be employed and used efficiently, effectively, honestly, and economically, particularly to avoid wastage in public funds and revenues. What do you think of this particular provision, Deputy Ombudsman? Did you perform your functions in consideration of your commitment to public interest?
Yes, Your Honor, we upheld public interest, Your Honor. In fact, at that time, we were direct contacts at least twice, Your Honor. So when the country was under complete lockdown, Your Honor, we were serving our fellow citizens, Your Honor, by procuring urgently needed items despite us being direct contacts, Your Honors. And may mga comorbidity pa yung namin, Your Honor. Bumili pa rin po kami dahil kinakailangan po, Your Honor. Mr. Chairman.
Can you honestly say, Deputy Ombudsman, that you perform your functions efficiently, effectively, honestly, and economically as required by this law?
Yes, Your Honor. I can honestly say that.
How about you, Yusek Lau? Can you honestly say that you are committed to promote public interest in all your actions in your transaction with Pharmaly?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I confirm that. In fact, during my short stint in public service since 2016 to 2020, it was in 2020 that I reported 6 days a week together with a lot of PSDBM employees, just to make sure that we always deliver what is needed for the government and the frontliners, Mr. Chairman. And every transaction we had with any agents, any supplier, especially the focus of this investigation, which is Pharmaly, we always take into consideration the best interest of the Philippine government.
Can you honestly say, Mr. Yusek Lau, that you efficiently, effectively, and honestly, and economically perform your functions for the interest of the government and the public?
Yes, Mr. Chair, in the affirmative, Mr. Chair.
Under Section 7 of Republic Act 6713, these are the prohibited acts and transactions. It also states that in addition to acts and omissions of public officials and employees now prescribed in the Constitution existing laws, the following shall constitute prohibited acts and transactions of any public official and employee and are hereby declared to be unlawful. Financial and material interest. Tinanong ko na po ito kanina, pero because this is a separate law, so babanggitin ko rin. Public officials and employees shall not directly or indirectly have any financial or material interest in any transaction requiring the approval of your office. Deputy Ombudsman, did you directly or indirectly have any financial or material interest or gains in this particular transaction?
Wala po, Mr. Chairman.
How about you, Yusek Lau? Did you?
None, Mr. Chairman.
And panguli, pinagbabawal din yung solicitation or acceptance of gifts. public officials, employees shall not solicit or accept directly or indirectly. So directly, of course, madali naman yun kasi malalaman natin yun kung binigay po sa inyo. But indirectly, ang tanong dito, baka may pinabigay sa ibang tao. Maring hindi sa inyo, pero indirectly, pinigay sa kamag-anak ninyo, sino man na appointees ninyo. Nasasabi dito, public officials, employees shall not solicit or accept directly or indirectly any gift, gratuity, favor, entertainment, including entertainment. Baka nagkaroon ng happy-happy muna bago ibigay yung transaction, bago pinirmahan. Loan or anything of monetary value from any person in the course of official duty or in connection with this particular transaction. Can you honestly say, Deputy Ombudsman, that you did not receive anything or solicit anything on your behalf of yourself or on behalf of others?
Opo, Mr. Chairman, wala po. Wala pong interest na binigay sa atin indirectly or directly po.
How about you, Yusik Lau?
Same answer, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for your answers. Siguro ang tatanungin ko rin po dito, Mr. Chair, yung president po ng formally, in as much as these particular laws apply also to those in the private.
Wang Chuyen. His answer.
Wang Yu Chuyen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm present.
So this particular law, Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, equally apply to private people, not only those people in the government. So because you have a transaction with the government, so in as much as isa sa mga issues that are being mentioned now, that there was possible corruption. So tatanungin ko po kayo, and you may answer directly, did you persuade, induce, or influence any official, whether PSDBM or anyone, to perform an act constituting a violation of the rules and regulations, including perhaps dito yung to make sure that this particular award will be given to you?
No, Mr. Chairman, I did not influence anybody in this matter.
Did you offer any gift, present, share, percentage, or benefit to the people that you transacted with?
No, Mr. Chairman, we did not provide any form of gifts or in a way.
Or any percentage or share from your company?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Or any form of entertainment?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Did you cause any undue injury in this particular regard to the government because of the fact that you transacted with the government? Was there any undue injury caused to the government?
No, Mr. Chairman. I believe we always offered the best price offer that we can proceed, and it's to my intention that our price has always been the lowest in this regard.
Could you honestly say that this transaction that you entered with the government was not disadvantageous or grossly disadvantageous to the government?
No, Mr. Chairman, it is not disadvantageous to the government, in my opinion.
Did you offer any interest or in your business to the people that you transacted with?
No, Mr. Chairman, we did not offer any kind of any of that.
So can you honestly say that you did not induce any public official to commit any of the offenses defined, as I mentioned previously?
No, Mr. Chairman, we did not do any of those.
Thank you, Mr. Wang Chuyen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Klaro naman po na binabanggit ko po kanina, malinaw po, Mr. Chair, na itong mga batas na ito, despite bayanihan po yung ginagamit po natin, applicable po ito. But klaro rin po dito, in order for this particular law to apply, dapat yung elements that are being mentioned here should be present. And no less than the resource persons, Mr. Chair, ang tinanong po natin at kinonfront po natin, and we understand and we believe that they are under oath nung sinabi po nila yung kailang mga sagot. At klaro po, lumalabas po, Mr. Chair, yes, maring babanggitin po ng mga iba na ito ay nag-apply. Totoo po yun, nag-apply itong mga batas po nito. Subalit, ibang katanungan, iba ring usapin kung meron bang paglabag na naganap o nangyari sa pagitan po ng formally at ng gobyerno dahil po sa transaction pong ito. Subalit, lumalabas po, Mr. Chair, klaro rin po, that there was no corrupt practices of public officers based on the questioning or that we undertook or we made with respect to the persons involved. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to ask my questions.
Thank you, Congressman Salon. First round is over. Next to interpolate for the second round, is Deputy Speaker Marcoleta. You have the floor, sir.
Salamat po, Mr. So, alam mo namang hindi po. Salamat po, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I have a few questions to the chairman of Parmali, Mr. Wang.
Yes, present, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wang Chu, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
You are a businessman, Mr. Wang,
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
and I'd like to believe that young as you are adept in making decisions in order that your business will succeed. Is my assumption correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I always do my best in this.
When you offered to help supply the needed medical supplies of our country, specifically during April and May 2020, did you realize that at the time, most countries and most people are scampering, even quarreling to get the needed medical supplies to address the pandemic?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think with COVID that happened at the end of 2019, I think everywhere around the world, there was a scarcity in the supplies. And when we saw that the situation, the COVID unfortunately has come to the Philippines in March in 2020, we saw that as there will be a wide scarcity in the supply as well. So we, me and my corporate officers together, we looked up actively from all countries to supply this.
Thank you. And as a businessman, you realize that every business probably in relation to the supply of medical equipment or supplies needed to address the pandemic, we are experiencing what we call a seller's market. Do you understand that?
Yes, definitely. In the months of March and April, there was definitely a huge imbalance to the seller's market, where whoever has the supplies would be advantageous in this kind of negotiations.
Yes, because a seller's market is a condition where there are more buyers than sellers.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Do you confirm that?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
And it so happened because of the scarcity of supply, we were quite lucky that we were able to get from Parmali at the time those supplies are most needed. Is it correct?
Mr. Chairman, as a local corporation, Parmali Pharmaceutical Corporation really put the supply of the Philippines as a top priority in that respect. You know, there was a lot of requests for the supplies elsewhere as well, but I thought as a duly local corporation, we need to address this supply by the government of the Philippines as a priority.
Yes, and at that time, you know that our requirement for these medical supplies is huge enough that a company like yours will always rely on your friends, on your linkages, on your contacts, so that you will be able to honor your contract to the government. Is that correct?
Yes, we never denied that we are a small company, and to make good of our obligations to the government, we would have to use all our resources on the supply side so that we can meet the obligation, so that we can be rightfully compensated and not be blacklisted in any of these transactions.
Yes. And is it unusual for a company, a relatively new and small company, to ask help from friends? Is it unusual?
I believe that is really what we wanted to do. We just want to make good of our obligations, and we did not feel any shameful to ask for helps to deliver, because these things are critically needed to help with the battle of COVID. So we did not think as any in that manner. So we did ask for help to supply for these
Yes.
things.
So actually what you are saying is it is not wrong to ask help because that is the legitimate thing to do if a huge supply is to be delivered to the government of the Philippines. And if at that time you needed help and you asked the help of some people, you did not consider that entirely wrong because that is supposed to be done by a legitimate company like yours. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I think in context, regardless of how big or how small companies, every company asks for help from financial institutions, from suppliers, and especially in the case of a small company like us, we really seek the help to make good of these contractual obligations, definitely.
Sometimes you need to go to banks. We call that financial leverage. Sometimes you go to friends, even personal friends, if that is what it takes in order to honor and comply with your contract with the government. Is that not correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So instead of congratulating you, what happened is you are being condemned because you ask help from your friends. But the records stand. You were able to supply the much needed medical equipment and supplies that my country needed at the time they are supposed to be there. Because nobody except Parmali was able to supply. What do you feel? What do you feel?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think we really needed any congratulations. I think as a company, what we really wanted, besides, of course, to do business, is also to help out with the situation. I have to tell you, when the first Senate hearing came out and then all this mass news, all these allegations about the company, I felt very disheartened because my staff, especially Crizel Margo, was actually in the fields. We could have did nothing, stayed at home, but my staff was in the fields, in the customs, in the warehouse, delivering these things exactly on time so that they can reach the government and to those people in need. So I felt very bad that we are branded as such. We don't need any recommendations or things. We just want to make good of what we did. And so I just felt a bit emotional at that point in time. But if there's any clarification, of course, we are really willing to cooperate to clarify. But we just did our part. I think that's the main answer I want to give. We did our part, whether indirectly to help with the COVID situation, I believe.
Thank you for that answer. You did not need any congratulations, but I think you have expected at the very least that our people should at least be grateful to what you did.
Mr. Chairman, no grateful is necessary. I think it is as a good citizen of anywhere should help out, to help people in need and to provide these equipments at a very timely and efficient manner, very responsiveness. I think that's what we all need to do. And because everybody felt the need to get access to all these masks or PPEs. And it is precisely that if at such a time we choose to buy from, if we only choose to buy from big players with regard of how responsive it can be, then it cannot be. But of course, I also have to salute corporations like the EMS. They took the effort to rebrand their factories to locally manufacture. Everybody played a part. I do not want to say we only did the only part, but we just did what we can in this regard. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. Wang. I just needed that I ask these questions to you because many people would say that you were treated unfairly because no matter how you tried. Of course, this committee recognizes the fact that you were the ones who was able to supply the much needed materials, pandemic materials that we needed in April and May. And that is for the record. Some suppliers made or helped us, but that was already another story because they came in June, July, probably when the supply is already there. But at the time these supplies are most needed, the record shows that you were the only one who was able to supply. And now you're being treated as if that you did something wrong in this country. It was the reverse. That is why I'm asking this question, so that it can be explained to the public, to the Filipino people, what really happened in this particular instance. Thank you very much, Mr. Wang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, may I now direct my questions to COA? Good afternoon, Chairman Mike of COA.
Good afternoon po.
Chairman Mike, nagkaroon lang naman ng pagdinig tungkol sa bagay nito dahil dun sa inyong COA report. Specifically, ito pong fund transfer na ginawa ng DOH to PS-DBM. Ito po yung 42.4 billion pesos which was tagged as deficient by COA. Ito po yung nakasulat fund transfer, documentary deficiencies, and unliquidated balances. Let us unpack this, Mr. Chair. When you said fund transfer, documentary deficiencies, what did we exactly mean by that?
Mr. Chairman, I think what the auditor meant was there was no documentation to reflect the arrangement between DOH and PS-DBM, especially considering the amount that was being transferred.
So you are referring to the memorandum of agreement, which is a requirement under your own circular 94-013. Am I correct in referring to that?
Yes, although I don't think it's just a requirement in the COA circular. I think it's also a requirement in, I'm not sure if it's a GPPB issuance or even in 9184 itself. I'm not very clear lang. Pero alam ko, hindi lang po sa circular yon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But what is very clear is that even if we refer to certain GPPB requirements, Bayanihan 1 is very clear that if any order, any rules, or regulations will become inconsistent with this law, meaning Bayanihan law will prevail. Is that not correct?
If it is inconsistent with Bayanihan 1, then that would be correct.
Yes, sir. That is exactly what happened. Because nobody should be able to invoke other laws, other rules or orders if they become inconsistent. Somebody is insisting that they should have done this, they should have qualified the capitalization of the supplier, they should have submitted these documents, they should have submitted certifications as to the qualifications and criminal records, if any, of the stockholders of the suppliers. Bayanihan 1 did not require all this, Mr. COA, Chair. Is that correct?
If you look at Bayanihan 1, what it said was that the President is authorized. The President is authorized to undertake procurement in the most expeditious manner as exemptions from RA 9184 and other relevant issuances.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is precisely what we're trying discussing this. Kasi yung ibang mga sectors, ang sinasabi nila, dapat nag-bidding, dapat nag-produce ng ganito, dapat ipinakita yung ganon. Ang sabi ng Bayanihan 1, hindi mo na dapat gamitin yan because exempted na doon sa ating Republic Act 9184. So bakit po tayo napunta doon sa napakaraming mga pagtatanong? You yourself, Mr. Chair, testified in the Senate at doon ay nakita ko yung portion ng inyong testimony na the prevailing law is Bayanihan 1 and you were even surprised why the PS-DBM still insisted on applying some measures of maybe transparency or accountability, due diligence. Pero hindi naman kailangan nilang gawin yon, Mr. Chair. That is what you tried to explain to the Senate. Pero ang nangyari po, pinipilit nila na merong ghost delivery, merong overpricing, and merong corruption. You yourself, Mr. Chair, went to explain that there was no corruption. Kaya po nung tinanong ko sa inyong assistant nung isang araw, the last time that we heard this, she herself said that there was no overpricing, there is no ghost delivery, and there's no corruption. And I asked her, if that is so, and that is the assessment of COA, bakit naman po nagpapatuloy pa yung pagtatanong ng Senado sa Blue Ribbon Committee? Of course, that was not answered by the COA auditor I asked at the time. Chair Mike, I'd like to ask you as to what is the main function, what is the office, or what is the object of a COA report? Should it be taken as something that is open-ended, that something has to be done? Ano po ba yon para maliwanagan po ng ating mga kababayan?
Mr. Chairman, combination po yun. As I mentioned, I think in a previous hearing in a different committee, if I recall correctly, ang audit report is a requirement of law na kailangan lumabas by June 30 of every year, more or less. And so yun, meron pong deadline yun. And so the findings in the report are as of a certain cut-off date. Dalawa po yung effective lang cut-off date niyan. Yung una is the end of the previous year, which is the year covered by the audit. No? So itong as of December 31, 2020, yan yung lumalabas sa audit reports ngayon ng DOH at saka PSDBM. The second cut-off, of course, is prior to coming out with the report, dahil nga may due process that is undergone, meron pa yung exit conference before the ano. So as of that date, kung ano yung nasubmit, ano yung napaliwanag and all, masasama na po yon. Ngayon, yung hindi pa mapaliwanag, hindi pa nasasubmit, babanggitin lang ng auditor yon na yun nga, at this point, hindi pa po nasasubmit yung wala pang sinasubmit na ganito or so on sa ganyan. So depende po sa findings. May mga findings dyan na hindi na open-ended, tapos na. Meron findings rin doon na open-ended ba, gaya ng ibang findings doon sa DOH. In fact, nakapag-submit na po ang DOH ng action plan doon sa mga recommendations at ito'y ine-evaluate ngayon ng audit team tungkol doon sa compliance issues and the like po. So, yun po yung ano, may cut-off po kasi yan, kaya hindi mo naman talaga pwedeng sabihin na final ang lahat ng nakasulat doon sa report. Some things are final, some things hindi pa po.
Mr. Kubo Chair, the fact that the very basis of the motu proprio investigation in the Senate is the 2020 COA report. So, ang ibig sabihin po nito, ito po ang pinagbabasihan nila. Ang nangyari po kasi nung kayo'y dumalo ulit sa kanila, I think it was in papers and it was printed. Ang sabi po rito, you were asked to repeat your remarks. You remember you appeared before us earlier this week, and before you beg off, you made something like, or you did say that there is no findings of overpricing and so on and so forth. I mean, to that effect. And then later in the day, it was quoted in the papers that in the report you said like this: in the report of PSDBM, there were no findings of overprice. But this was because the state auditor's observations were limited to the management of the inventories. Mr. COA Chair, this qualification gave some speculations. It provided some speculations as if you insinuated that something is not complete in the report, as you were explaining. Was that particular statement indicated, or did that particular statement of yours, a qualifying statement, indicate even a shadow of corruption or overpricing or ghost delivery, which the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee can continue to pound on?
Mr. Chairman, yeah,
because it provided a very negative inference. It is as if that the COA report is limited. Tingnan po niyo yung sinabi niyo rito. But this was because the state's auditors' observation were limited to the management of inventories. So it is as if that it is open-ended. Kung hindi po ninyo ma-qualify ito, magkakaroon po talaga ng problema. There will be a likelihood of two houses of Congress investigating the same COA report, but ending up with different output, a different result. So we would like to hope that COA should be more effective in communicating your report in a manner that it should have not only certainty, but with clarity. Ano po ang ibig niyong sabihin doon na the state auditor's observations were limited to the management of inventories?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, yeah, what I meant to say there was that in the report, ang findings lang nila were on inventory management. There were no findings of overprice. Yun lang po ang sinasabi doon. Ang nakita nila...
It furnished the idea that there is something more. It furnished the idea that probably corruption is there because you were limited only to the management of inventories. The COA report should at least be able to clarify that there was none. Ano po yung saysay ng COA report kung sasabihin lang natin that you were limited only to one section, but in other section there could have been overpricing? Because that was the message. That was the message that you gave when you testified again in the Senate.
I don't think so, Your Honor, Mr.
So
Chairman.
can you make yourself very clear in so far as the report or this statement that you gave to the Senate?
Like I said, if you read the report will say that there were problems with inventory management. There is no mention at all of overpricing in the report. Now, that speaks for itself kung ano po ang ibig sabihin nun because, like I said, yun lang ang nakita ng auditors at the time they came out with the report. Yun lang ang nakita nila, that there was a problem with inventory management. In fact, the inventory management pertained to the supplies that were purchased by PSDBM using its own funds. It did not refer to the 42 billion or so that was transferred from DOH to PSDBM to procure supplies. Yung observation na yun only pertained to the PSDBM acquired for their, which they acquired with their own funds, the supplies that PSDBM acquired using their own funds for purposes of their virtual store. Ito, I think, yung pinapaliwanag na kanina na pinagkukunan ng mga ibang ahensya, including actually DOH in certain instances.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. COA Chair. But may I ask if COA is in a position to pass judgment on the inventory management of the Department of Health?
Of the Department of Health?
Because they're the ones continuously procuring the medical supplies that we need. And of course, that is on a continuing basis. If COA would insist that it should liquidate the pending procurement, then it will delay the entire process. The question is, would the COA in a better position to judge the kind of procurement system on even the volume or even the frequency? That is the entire question, because you are already passing judgment on the mechanism that a particular department can adopt insofar as those budgets are concerned in order to address a public emergency. We are not in ordinary time. We are not in an ordinary situation, Mr. COA Chair. We are addressing a pandemic, and the law is very clear. So were you in a position to judge the kind of procurement under a condition of public health emergency?
Mr. Chairman, there's no question about the procurement that was done. Wala pong issue na ni-raise doon. When it comes to inventory management, this is just the observation na may mga inventories na hindi na gumagalaw because at the time na kukunin sana ng mga ibang ahensya, mas mahal na yung binibenta ng PSDBM kaysa doon sa available sa market. This was around September 2020 onwards. Yun lang po yung finding. There's nothing about the DOH supplies which I would presume ginagamit yon. Kaya nga continuous ang kanilang ano. In fact, with respect to itong inventory management observation, according to PSDBM, na ubos na nila yung stocks as of June 30 of this year. They already submitted the report to the auditors about that.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Chair. The reason why I am belaboring this issue because you may recall that in your 2017 COA report on DepEd, you specifically pointed out the areas where corruption is quite prevalent. For example, in your 2017 COA report on DepEd, you precisely indicated that 99% lapse in the physical target in the delivery of information communication technology packages to the schools. You noted that 77,000 schools in the whole country were unable to receive their packages. As a matter of fact, you even mentioned 4 suppliers of DepEd which should have been automatically disqualified under Section 34.3 of the IRR of 9184. But you see, in that particular report, you did specify the possible areas of corruption. And they're not only deficiencies of inventories, but you did indicate areas of corruption. Can you imagine 77,000 schools and the budget is 10 billion pesos between fiscal year 2015 and 2017. But you will note that the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee did not even bother to even ask you what happened in the particular report. Samantalang dito, Mr. Chair, you did not even indicate the name of Farmally, you did not even mention the name of Michael Yang or whoever is now being examined and investigated in the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee. That is why we believe, Mr. Chair, that your report, whether you like it or not, is being politicized. They can be weaponized by people. Kaya ito po yung gusto namin sanang ipakiusap sa inyo. We should present it with more clarity and definiteness. When you said that it's only about inventory management, it should be like that. It should be, wala na sana yung qualifications like you. We only look on this side. We did not look at the other side because it furnishes additional idea na baka meron kayong hindi tiningnan. Ito po yung nangyari kaya nagkagulo-gulo na po. In the likelihood of different perceptions and in the likelihood of different sets of investigation like what we are doing now, both houses are investigating the same COA report. But in the likelihood, probably we will be producing different results. Mr. COA Auditor. Last question po. Are you familiar with the term strawman fallacy or strawman argument?
No.
I am referring to this term, Mr. Chair Mike, because the COA report is the subject matter of the COA, of the investigation in the Senate as well as in the House of Representatives. This is the basis why we are doing an investigation. What is a strawman argument? I don't think that they saw something wrong in your report because you perfectly qualified that your report did not mention ghost delivery. It did not mention overpricing, and you yourself explained that there is no corruption. But precisely they cannot attack your report. They can only weaponize it. What did they do? They erected a strawman. Ito ang binugbog na nilang binugbog. Sino ang strawman dito, Mr. Chair? Parmali. Ano naman ang connection po ninyo ng report ninyo sa Parmali? Kagaya po ng tinatanong namin kanina, on record, it was only Parmali was able to supply the much needed medical supplies and kits that our people needed at that time. There is no question. Tinitingnan po nila whether meron silang capacity, sinusuyod nila, mababa naman ang capitalization nyo. But for the record, they are the only ones who supplied the most needed supplies to us. Tingnan po ninyo yung ginagawa nila. So binubugbog po nila yung strawman. They distorted. Okay? They provided a temporary punching bag. Ganun po yun. And that is now a fallacy. Yun po yung gusto namin ipaliwanag. And we hope, Chair Mike, people will not be confused. Kasi po ang nangyayari, they cannot attack your report. Your report is complete. Your report is categorically, I would say, complete insofar as our investigation is concerned. Wala po sa report ninyo ang problema. It is the way they weaponize it. It is the way they politicize it. This is the sad situation that we are in, Mr. Chair. Kaya ang pakiusap namin sa inyo, if we can be more definitive, if we can present the report with more clarity, and it can be communicated effectively in order that you can probably be the tool for continuity, for coherence, for cooperation, because these three elements are the ones that can rationalize the normative relations between the elected officials and our bureaucracy. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman D.S. Marcoleta. As there are no other members who listed to interpolate, are there any matters that the committee wishes to take up? As there are no other matters, is there any motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
Okay, D.S. Marcoleta, thank you. Before we adjourn, may I remind the resource persons to comply with the requested submission and to take note of suggestions, recommendations of members. We will follow up these matters through our committee secretariat. And also, our next meeting is on September 27, 11 a.m. to give this 1 week for our secretaries and government officials to focus on the pandemic. The meeting is now adjourned. Maraming salamat po sa inyong kooperasyon at partisipasyon sa pagdinig na ito. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Salamat po. Salamat po. Thank you po, Sir Bong Suntay, Sir Agabas, Sir Jimenez, Sir GP, Sir Ron Salo. Thank you, mga secretary, DOH, DBM, and all others here.
Boss, happy birthday! Boss Mike, happy birthday. Wala siya.